All right, and then let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. You can follow along with me if you would like. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United
States of America
and to the
republic
republic
for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice
for all.
These delays are killers.
Wow. Like I said,
maybe we should mute everybody but Evan.
Okay, it works. We all get to be a little bit of togetherness for all of us. So welcome everyone. Thank you all for attending today. We have a great agenda. We actually are doing a workshop today where Mary Perner and Eileen Gazzulo, I believe it's pronounced, are going to be helping us on a presentation for countering misinformation online and how to really present factual information and how to make it an effective and meaningful form of communication, which, given everything going on in the world, I think is going to be a really meaningful and important workshop for all of us. And I hope we all get some really good information out of it. Before we slip into that, I just do have a couple of quick announcements that I want to get at the beginning. And I also will be reminding us, or Sharon will be reminding us at the end for one of these. But first is our next meeting. Right now, the plan for our next meeting is really to focus on the recall and trying to just do what we can to support Newsom in the recall efforts that are coming up. We will probably have another workshop type meeting where we'll actually be, writing postcards, making calls, doing texts. I'm not sure exactly. I need to work with the campaign on this, on what would be most effective, given our time frame and where we're at, what we're doing, and how we can be most effective. So I'll be working with the Newsom campaign on that to figure out the details. But expect our August meeting to be a working meeting where we will be doing all we can to support Newsom in the recall. In the interim, we also are planning to begin some tabling. Jackie and Ellis are both going to be taking leads on that in different locations, but we're planning on having some tabling where we can promote our club also at the same time. But the main purpose of the tabling is going to be, again, working on the recall. So I'll be getting out information for both of those. I'll be getting it out through email, and our website is basically ready to go live. So hopefully I'll be also announcing the website going live very soon. I don't have it for today because many of you may know I was out of town for most of the month. So I wasn't able to quite finalize the website details, but I believe any day now it should go live. So we're getting a lot of exciting things are going to be happening this month. We've got a lot of work to do and we've got a lot of action to be taking. So this is really, what I've been looking forward to is where we have, actions where we can start really doing the work that we all signed up to do. The other big thing is our September meeting will be a little bit different. Instead of having our regularly scheduled meeting, we will be having our picnic. It's going to be on September 19th, and I'm going to turn it over, Sharon, not to put you on the spot, but would you like to say a little bit about the barbecue?
Yes, our barbecue is September 18th at the Sports Park in Pleasanton. Unfortunately, it's the same day as the San Ramon Valley barbecue, but I spoke to Tim Sabrante and I spoke to Sean, and they're going to make it. It's ours.
The translation is Eric and Rebecca.
Yes, and they're going to go to both. So that's good. And Jackie's helping me and Ron's going to help me. So we're going to get it all together. We're going to send out save the date notices pretty soon. And then we'll send out invites, and RSVPs and stuff like that. And we will need help the day of, setting up and doing that kind of stuff.
Van just raised his hand.
Yeah, I'm willing to help, is what I meant to say.
Yeah, thank you, Van.
Yeah.
You helped.
Yeah, by the way, she didn't mention our main helper.
Oh. Okay. More to come.
Thank you. And again, there'll be updates coming out on email, and keep an eye out. But the more help we can get, the better. And we usually have, I believe it's usually a potluck for the food as well. So
yeah.
Well, were you going to buy meat and
yeah, club usually buys the meat, and then everybody brings either a salad or dessert, something like that. We'll work on the details.
But we usually allocate a certain amount of money to cover the meat, and I forget how much we did. But
we'll sort that out, those details. So yeah, be prepared for, we'll provide the main course, and we'll be looking to all of you to help out with the sides and the desserts. All right.
My name's
yes, Ron.
Yeah, also my wife will be helping with the serving and the setup on it. So.
And we usually have live music, so.
We do. I have a confirmation today from my drummer, who will also be singing with us. We may have 3 of us. And we have a great fun. And typically what we'll do is during the setup and the warm up, we start maybe a little bit early. If the picnic officially starts at 12, what we've done in the past is we've begun the music at around 11:30. And then we take a break after or right when the speeches begin. And then we come back and play for another hour or so after that. But we're soft enough in volume that you can ignore us if you want, or you can listen.
And for anyone who hasn't attended in the past, I've gone multiple times. It is a great fun event. We usually have a nice spot with some good shade. We really set up, and it's just everyone. We're talking a little bit of politics, but it's mostly just an opportunity of getting to know your fellow club members in a social setting, enjoying a beautiful afternoon. It's California weather. We are lucky. I can predict with a fair deal of confidence it will be nice out that day. And so it's a really fun event. It's a good one if you know anyone who is not currently a member, who is interested in just meeting us in a social setting also, might want to learn more about the club and the people here. It's a great event to invite them to. I think the first picnic I went to, I had only attended maybe 1 or 2 meetings before then. I was very new to the club when I first went. And the picnic was just a really good opportunity for me to meet many of the people who are now my friends. So highly encourage, bring people along. It is a very enjoyable event. Anything else on that before I move on?
Hey, Evan, are you planning to do a class of cooking or anything? Showing people some tricks?
That might be a good idea. I'll need to think about that. But yeah, maybe I will do a little something fun with cooking, since we'll actually be in person.
Exactly. I think you should do that. That would be good.
Yeah.
Like Bananas Foster, or Cherry Jubilee, or some fire or something. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
No
something like something. It could be something desserty. You can make it like some dessert or something. People can actually make and eat. It's more fun doing that.
That sounds like a lot of fun. That's a great idea.
And if you want to even send out ingredients before, people can bring it. Kind of like do it together with you.
I think since it's in person, I can probably work out bringing the ingredients and everything. I think we can do this. Yeah, this sounds like a great idea. Thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem.
I think you just raised attendance by several people.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can learn a little something and then get some good food out of it. So there you go. So with that, so that's our next 2 meetings. After that, we're coming into the winter season, and there's actually a lot going on throughout locally and throughout the country. So while I don't have the specific details on what the following meetings will have, it does look like we're coming into a very exciting time for basically our work. And then, as everyone in the political world knows, once we pass Christmas, really election season starts in the US as soon as that. And so come January, we're going to start having races and candidates that we're going to be working with and trying to support, and getting into endorsements and really just building up our capacity, as well as helping out other candidates locally and nationally as best as we can. So be prepared. We're now into the working part of our year, basically. So with all of that said, I think that's it for my announcements right now. So one thing I do want to point out, and this is a change I'm planning on continuing for this meeting and going forward, is that we'll have a brief little introduction for any announcements that from the president's announcements, anything that's setting up the meeting. And then we'll go into our guests or our workshops or any activities that we have at the beginning of the meeting. And then we'll do our club business at the end of the meeting. And this is for a couple of reasons. One is for any of our guests, it's a little easier to schedule if they know, you'll be starting right at, 7:10. And it's also, I think it's for newer members or people who might not have been here for a while. It's nice to know they can come to the first half of the meeting if they want. And then if they're not interested in learning more about our finances and such, then they can head out. So they can get sort of the meat of the meeting in an hour. So my plan from here on out is to have our presenters, our workshops and everything at the beginning half of the meeting, the first part of the meeting. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our two guests today. As I said, we have Mary Perner and Eileen Gazzulo. I hope I'm saying it correctly. All right. And they're going to be presenting a workshop in which they're going to give us information on combating disinformation online and how to present truthful arguments, as well as an opportunity afterwards where we're going to go into breakout rooms and we're going to actually work on practicing these skills. So with that, I'll turn it over to my two friends.
Thanks, Evan. Eileen?
Yep, I'm here. So I'm gonna.
So good evening and welcome to Livermore Indivisible Framing and Messaging Workshop. Before getting started, let's cover a couple of housekeeping details. We ask that everyone remain muted during the presentation. Then at the end of the presentation, there will be plenty of time for Q&A. At that time, if you raise your hand, or you can raise your Zoom hand, which should be at the bottom of your page. In the reactions, you could click on the reactions icon off to the right at the bottom. Or you can add your questions to the chat. But if you put them in the chat, we ask that you please put the word ask in capital letters, capital A, capital S, capital K, in front of your question so we can distinguish it from comments, and that way we can get to it more quickly. This meeting, as has been stated, will be recorded and available to review in a day or two on the Tri-Valley Democratic Club YouTube channel. So as Evan says, and as most of you know, I'm Mary Perner. I had the idea for this group back in 2017 and finally got it started this past January. A side note, my original partner in this was very afraid of Trump and she moved to France. So I resumed in 2020. We are a very small group, just 3 members so far, and dedicated to fighting political disinformation. We've borrowed a lot of tools from an indivisible national disinfo group called the Truth Brigade. In its turn, Truth Brigade bases much of its work on the work of George Lakoff, and some of us here know him. He's a nationally known linguist and communication specialist who is still creating YouTube videos and presentations for people. They're very useful. So next, let's see, we come to this work with diverse backgrounds, but we have a common interest in language and communication. Eileen, who created all of our slides, originally came from a Northeast Ohio family of Democrats. She's a 27-year Livermore resident. For her entire working life, she has worked in companies providing services for higher education market And for the past 22 years, she's focused on provision of educational software to colleges and universities. In her current role as Senior Manager of Sales Support and Consulting, she utilizes trainings like this, webinars, and consultative sessions. Unsurprisingly, Eileen is the F&M Group's technical provider. Her social media interest is Twitter. There's me. I came to Livermore 33 years ago by way of Wisconsin and upstate New York. My graduate studies included 2 years of clinical social work with an emphasis on working with Hispanics. This was followed by 2 more years of work on an ESL teaching credential. Work history for various nonprofits includes Stanford YWCA Program Director, East Palo Alto's Drew Health Foundation as Senior Therapist, and a fair housing advocate with Mid-Peninsula Citizens for Fair Housing. This was followed by 20 years of tutoring with Livermore's Twin Valley Learning Center, where I eventually became executive director. And now I'm running, or at least before COVID, I was running my own small tutoring business. A great deal of my tutoring work involved teaching writing skills at levels K through 12 and sometimes college prep. So basically, I spent a lot of time teaching how to write. Facebook is my social media focus, and I'm a frequent writer of letters to the editor. Our third member is not here this evening. Marilyn Dykstra is currently on furlough due to family health issues. She is a former assistant professor of English. So with that, let's begin. Countering disinformation. Every time I open the Livermore Independent newspaper and visit the mailbox section, I'm likely to see letters that spout disinformation and make me want to publish an angry response. Also, an old friend, a yoga teacher, is an anti-vaxxer. She gave me a book on her views at Christmas time. What should I say when she spouts false science? What's the right response to that misleading tweet or that misdirected Facebook post? There is so much propaganda, so many false characterizations, intentionally misleading messages, and outright lies that now threaten our democracy and even our lives when it comes to COVID. Today, and in other ways, today we will be learning and practicing a couple basic techniques to counter the lies and bad information. Let's start with this slide, best practices in responding. And it says, in almost every situation, the best response to disinformation is no response. Now, I did a double take on that when I first learned it. It seems counterintuitive, and it's certainly against my basic impulses. But in so many cases, argument and dishing out facts defeats our purpose. So how do we respond? Let's see, part of that slide is missing, I think. I mean, did you change it? Ah, I see, I remember. How to respond. When you find yourself engaging with folks who are genuinely confused by harmful narratives, what should you do? So these are people who haven't made up their minds, okay? For those who have made up their minds, do not engage with disinformation, or in any case, do not engage with disinformation directly. We're going to break this down item by item. So you need to prime people to be skeptical. Let's see. Sorry, I lost my place. So let's see, when you're priming people to be skeptical, you have to question the source of their information, and we'll be getting into that soon. So I would have to question my friend's source of information, that book. We would have to focus on discrediting the messenger rather than fact-checking the claim. We would address underlying concerns that have to do with feelings and things that we can agree on, even though we're taking different positions on a particular issue. If we can find something about that issue to agree on, we get to that point and we have discredited the messenger, we can pivot to a proactive message. Then we can redirect information from official sources. We also need to know when to disengage. So starting with, by the way, Eileen, is this slide 5?
I don't have the numbers in front of me.
Okay, well, I'll
Possibly.
assume it is. Okay. For example, for social media, do not engage with disinformation directly. Social media rewards engagement in their algorithms. I'm a member of a Facebook page purportedly supporting President Biden and Vice President Harris. However, posts on that page frequently display pictures of our former president accompanying rants about him and his regime. Once upon a time, I would have joined in the bashing, but now I realize every click and every share I make to posts like that elevate the golfer-in-chief on Facebook or other social media algorithms. So we should only engage with the content we want to spread. So if we find a post or a tweet, we like it, it gives a message we agree with, that is where we would engage, make a comment, and a share. I'm using Facebook language because that's my chosen source of media. So the next slide would asks, are there examples of non-political disinformation? Okay, and we'll get to that in a second. First, we have to prime people to be skeptical. It helps to point out how easy it is to unintentionally spread false information. And now, here's the example. I heard for many, many years that New Yorkers were unfriendly people. Then my own experience and my belief changed. I moved to upstate New York, took a train into the city to visit friends, carrying my my infant son, got lost on the subway, and everybody was fabulous. They helped me out. As soon as you break the ice, they're great. New Yorkers are great. And nonstop, I found that to be true. How about another one? Californians are laid back. Do we find that to be true? I don't think so. In fact, we're all operating at a pretty high speed. What else? Pit bulls are by nature vicious. Okay, animal lovers, what do you think of that? They're just big cuddle bugs most of the time. It depends on the owner. So there is bad information out there, but these days the bad information we care about or want to work on, it has to do with political misinformation. So we should focus on discrediting the messenger. So go easy on facts. It says rather than fact checking the claim, and I'm telling you, go easy on the facts. Dems have a reputation of being know-it-alls, so go easy on the facts. You can slide them in there, but don't pound them in. And fact checking, at least at the beginning. It's a turnoff for a lot of people. people believe information from messengers they trust, such as really good friends. So we might have a friend, let's say at church, who has done us a lot of favor or is working a food bank or something. And we have never heard lies from this person, or he has been a good person to us. And we can refer people who question, if this is a person who believes our message and they want more information or they want verification, we could suggest that such and such a person will also be helpful. Then it says, reveal the origin of the content and contest the credibility of the source. Who are the messengers we might trust? If we have already referred them to a trusted person, sometimes you just won't know right away. It might take more than one conversation. But when we get to questioning the motives of people who are spreading bad information, we should ask ourselves, and we should ask our audience, why might they be doing this? What do they get out of it? Are they getting followers? Do they want to enlist voters? Will they get funding out of this? What do they get out of it? Are they corporate? And are they working on an issue that will benefit them financially? These are different questions that we can and should ask depending on the issue. And by the way, can anybody read the message in that bottle? I can't. It's probably disinformation. Okay, then address the underlying concerns and pivot to a positive message. And we'll be talking more about this very soon. For now, think about any shared feelings or values we might have with our listeners, which I have mentioned, but I can't say it too often. Try and bond with your listener or your audience. Try to find commonalities. Then use the ABC method to pivot. Acknowledge the emotion, the commonality, and go for the common ground. Once you have that established, bridge with a simple phrase to your content. Shift the conversation. This is when you can begin to question the messenger, when you can begin to share your point of view. Then, if the conversation is going well, redirecting may be possible. So to redirect, let's try to direct people to be unbiased, accurate information. Now, this is a command, but I want to change that a little bit because giving orders or advice can be off-putting for a lot of people, especially if they have opinions. They don't want to hear you tell them what to do. So questions, I like to use questions or shared experience. I think it works a little better. That's what I believe, especially when you've just begun talking with somebody. So example, instead of telling people where to find correct information, you might ask, have you ever tried PolitiFact? Or I like checking Snoops. They're often helpful. Okay. So, and then finally, this may not end with one conversation or with one presentation to an audience in the form of a letter to the editor or a presentation. You might need multiple conversations. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. If somebody is truly and sincerely wanting to know the truth and not locked into some point of view, there's a lot of hope. On the other hand, sometimes we live in cowboy country. We know when to ride off into the sunset. So if your audience is hardcore, save your breath. If they're easing into the message, you can end things on a positive note and don't wear them out. You may have many chances or other chances to revisit the conversation in the future. So now that you've learned best practices, and they will help, but how do we create our messaging? For that, we turn you over to Eileen. Eileen, what's next?
So just like you said, and I know we have a little bit of chat in the chat. It's a little bit of a, to do the slides and also try to keep on the chat. And so I think we're going to open it up for a conversation when we're just about done here and before we go in our breakouts. But yes, it's true. So what kind of tools can you use? And one of the tools that's very popular, and especially with the Truth Brigade, is just starting with a sandwich, with something as simple as a sandwich. So with your sandwich, you have a couple different pieces to your sandwich. You have your person who's asking, I'd like to build a truth sandwich, please. And this is what you're going to present to your whoever it is that you're talking with, or trying to discredit the disinformation without making them feel bad or being confrontational. So our truth sandwich starts with stating the fact, and then debunking the lie, and then finally restating the fact that you want to bring across. So what do we mean here? Well, we got to start with the bun. That's the most basic piece of it. And what you want to do is state a truth or a common ground. When you're confronted with someone, and it can be really hard, you know, especially now with things opening up again and seeing your friends and family after so long, there's all kinds of stories and information going around. So what you want to do is you want to state something that's truth or a common ground. So for a very, very simple example, what's in the news a lot? The elections and the auditing of elections, and were the elections fair, et cetera. So something I think that we can state that anyone would agree with you is that free and fair elections are so important to me. And I think most Americans feel that way. I don't think many people would argue with that. Anyone you talk to would say, me too, I believe that we need free and fair elections also. And then this is where you're going to add the patty. You're going to add the meat of the sandwich here, or your vegetarian patty or your egg salad or whatever it is, but you want to kind of plant some seeds of doubt that reveal the sender's motives. And so when we talk about the messenger, it's not necessarily your friend, but it's where that messenger was, where they got that information from, which might not be the best source. So we want to plant a few seeds of doubt. So I might say something like, you know, watching what's going on in Arizona, it really breaks my heart. The company I work for is based in Phoenix, and I work for a very progressive company, and the people there are wonderful. We even get paid time off to participate in voter drives and other volunteer opportunities. So what's going on in Arizona with the cyber ninjas counting the votes? This isn't protecting democracy. It's fueling the big lie by putting partisan interests over voters' rights. Why are they bringing those ballots out of state? Doesn't that seem odd to you? And I can't believe that the people of Arizona, who are such good people, are watching this and not being a little disturbed about what's going on with their ballots. So that's putting the meat of my argument. I didn't say, no, you're wrong, there is no fraud. Rather, I tried to personalize it a little bit. And then I'm going to wrap it up again. I'm going to finish the sandwich. I'm going to put the rest of the bun all together on it. And I'm going to reiterate the truth to present a positive and a proactive message. So once again, I'm going to say, you're right. You know, we really need to protect people's rights to vote to make sure that we still have free and fair elections. And you know, that the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which is in front of the Senate, that can do that. You know, if you agree, I think we should be contacting our senators. You can write a letter, you can send them an email, call their office phone, let them know that we want this protected. You're not being confrontational. There's not much there that anyone can argue with you about. Now, of course, it's not going to work for everyone. And sometimes you can't pour too much on. So you have to really consider the size of your sandwich. You have to consider what you're saying and who you're saying it to. I'm much more comfortable saying certain things to my daughter who moved to Texas with her husband rather than my son-in-law's dad, who is a diehard Texan Republican. So I kind of have to build my sandwich a little bit differently depending who I'm talking to. And sometimes just a couple of sliders may go down a little bit better. And you'll notice these are even chicken sliders instead. So I might have to use something a little bit different. And I put on that lettuce, I personalized it a little bit. I tried to make it more about the people. So that's what we call a truth sandwich. That's what the Truth Brigade and George Lakoff call a truth sandwich, is to be able to have facts that folks can't deal with. And then in that middle, you kind of debunk it, the misinformation, without attacking the person that you're talking to, or even, you know, you're stupid to be thinking about something like that, but rather to make it more personal. The whole goal of a truth sandwich is to be a starter, to see if they're receptive to receiving that sandwich. If they slap your hand and walk away, well, then that might be the time to disengage. But the goal is to start. So once we do have that starting, then we can take a few more action steps. And Mary, back to you. Now that they're listening a little bit, now what do I do? And do I still have Mary? And did we lose?
Mary,
Mary, you're up. Are you muted?
Not anymore.
She walked away into the sunset there. I don't know.
I was trying to be polite, but it doesn't work. Anyway, when or if the conversation is making headway, you can try to reference those trusted friends and community members again. Try to keep your words off, and that's the use local and nonpartisan messengers. Keep the conversation centered on the impact on people. So keep your words authentic, personal. Have them revolve around shared values and feelings. And then finally, encourage, when they're ready, encourage people to take concrete actions. Now, if they're just at the start, an action could be just maybe you would want to talk with Joe over at the food bank about this. He knows a lot about this issue. And so maybe your listener is good friends with Joe. And you're good friends, and so you trust Joe, and that could be a concrete action. But if your listener or your audience is totally on board with what you're saying, actions can be more substantial. They could call, as Eileen was saying, call a legislator, attend a meeting, post on Facebook, all of those things. And then in a few minutes, we're going to be forming breakout groups, but before we do, here's a quick review of best practices. If you're on social media, you might want to include the Indivisible Truth Brigade's hashtag to amplify your message. Or, and that's a pitch for Truth Brigade. They're up to, what is it? How many million posts now or retweets? Just, they've got a huge following now. So you might want to do that, or you might have a hashtag of your own that you want to add. So no clicks or comments on the bad guys. Really, don't do it. No matter how tempting. And even if they're asking you to, you know, if you see certain pictures, just scroll past, go somewhere else. If you name it, you're going to spread it. I know you don't want that. Journalists need to learn this too. So don't buy into the disinformant's frame or name. The message must be authentic. Again, it needs to come from the heart. It must be true. It must be personal. Don't argue. Go to exposing and questioning the motives of the source that's spreading the disinformation, the bad actor. Start with your buns. I'm sorry, that didn't come out right. Start and end with the truth.
She loves that bun. She loves that buns image. So.
That was sort of And then gently share with persuadable people. And as I said, you can use the different sources to share, like Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. Letters to the editor. There might be other sources that I'm not even mentioning here. So now let's open things up for questions. Again, please raise your actual hand or your Zoom hand. And we have some ASK questions in the chat. And so let's go to the chat first. Okay, start at the top. So is that from you, Eileen? We have 20 participants. We should do 3 breakout groups?
That was from me. That's just to you. I think the questions that we have so far, the first one was Van Rainey.
Okay, I'm missing them here.
Okay.
Let's go down.
The question is, does sharing snarky comments help in spreading info that is supportive to my position?
In your case, Van, it might. Your comments are funny. But in general, probably not. Okay. If you can keep it from being insulting, from making your listener sound stupid, if you can keep it from the heart and still be snarky, then keep to the humor. Humor is great.
And the next question is Van as well, I think is the second part. Van, do you want to ask that directly? You want me to read it?
I can read it. It's basically, you know, if you're trying to discredit a messenger, how do you avoid expressing contempt when discrediting the messenger? Because contempt is the killer of any conversation.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So, again, don't make statements about the messenger. Ask questions. Ask questions. Why do you think they say that? Do you think they benefit? Have your listener engage with you on the questions. Maybe they're going to answer those questions for you, and that way you can avoid being contemptuous of the messenger. Eileen, do you have any insight into that?
No, I agree, and it really does. I know that I knew someone who all the time was sharing stories that had been already that were from like 4 or 5 years ago that were already discredited by Snopes. And, you know, so some of the way is just to say, hey, you know what, that story's really old. In fact, I think it was circulating like 3 or 4 years ago. I'll have to check that out again, but I know that was discredited already. So it's kind of like, it is a fine line to kind of walk, I believe.
And with some of that, that might be an opportunity to squeeze in information about Snoops or PolitiFact. There are opportunities that come in the conversation for things like that.
So how do you discredit a pundit who survives by enraging his listeners and creating a kind of moral armor around himself that requires that his listeners, kind of fall in line and believe regardless of the facts and the emotional motives?
I don't think you can.
I think you ignore it.
Leave them alone.
You have to ignore it. It's one of those situations. You can discredit the message that they're giving, but not the messenger. You can question the validity of what's being said as part of your truth sandwich. Eileen?
Yeah, no, I agree. I know that right now I saw on Facebook, one of my brothers is having a little back and forth with one of his former friends or one of his friends back in Ohio about vaccines. And the guy is saying, they can't tell us what to do about the vaccines and we don't know if they're safe and we've been hearing this and blah, blah, blah. And my brother said, where did you hear that? And he said, well, Fox had a thing about whatever. And my brother said, you don't think all those folks at Fox, even the Murdoch family, they're all vaccinated. So why are they telling you that? I don't watch Fox. So why are they telling their listeners that? So that's part of that whole kind of putting the question back on. Right. But some folks are just not going to, they're not going to care. Have you ever watched, he's on the Daily Show. He's that interviewer who would go to the Trump rallies.
Oh yeah.
And, so it's really asking questions where any sane person or with common sense could see they're contradicting themselves, but you can just try. That's all you can do.
I wouldn't, but you can try. But again, I would spend more time questioning what they get out of it, and not directly. You don't go after them. That you go after another listener who might be more amenable to your message, and then you say, why do people say things like this? Where do they get this information when this is happening and this is happening? This worries me about, for example, for the coronavirus, this worries me about people who might be getting sick. So you bring it back to the personal. Here's another ask. In my past training on working on conflict, we were taught never to attack individuals. And is there a question in that part?
Yeah, that was my question. And I think you kind of already addressed it. So what I was saying here is, conflict resolution, you're taught not to personalize things. And what I'm hearing here is we're personalizing it. So I guess my question is discrediting the messenger.
I'm sorry, go.
Discrediting the messenger could be a sticky wicket if you end up not effectively addressing the messenger. So I'm just saying, how do you do that? And I'm anxious to hear all those tools and how to do that. So,
well, I'm saying discrediting, how can I put it? Questioning the motives of the messenger. We don't call them names. We question their motives and how they came to deliver these kinds of messages. We ask, what are they getting out of it? And we are hoping that our listener will start asking questions himself or herself. So we're not calling them names. We're not calling them liars or anything. We are just being skeptical. and back to as often as we can to any kind of shared sense of what's right with our audience.
Right, and I think the personalization is more of your own, you personalize it by offering your own experiences.
So it's not personalizing the messenger, it's personalizing my own opinion.
Correct, right. Correct. Okay. And especially if it can find common ground with whoever you're talking to, but sharing a personal experience, you know, stories and experiences go a lot farther than facts and figures. So
right. And this might be, Jackie, this might be your personal opinion, but you might want to try re-expressing that as concern, feelings, and as Eileen says, tell stories that illustrate. And how are we doing here with the asks?
I don't see any additional asks. I see some comments, lots of good comments here.
Okay.
Anybody else have a question to ask? Raise your hand.
Raise your hand.
I have my hand up for a while.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see it raised.
Yeah.
I apologize. Go ahead. Oh yeah, it is.
I noticed that you referenced George Lakoff, who's a personal friend. And he told me that arguing with somebody who's 180 degrees from you hardens your position and hardens their position. And from that, I came up with Ellis's law of pissing contests. A pissing contest is where nobody wins and everybody gets wet. So don't sit in the first row. In fact, don't even get into any of them. A few months back, and maybe it was years back, the club hired a psychologist to speak to us one afternoon. And what she told us was that trust is the most important thing. So the person that you're having this interchange with has to have a trust in you, and you have to trust them. It has to be a relationship. So maybe, like you were saying, your son-in-law might be somebody you can talk to, but not his father, because maybe you don't know him that well, and maybe you haven't got enough water under the bridge, enough experience there. But it has to be somebody who trusts you. And keep in mind that this is a sale, and sales is seduction, and you go an inch at a time, and you get them to move just a little bit, just to soften their position so it's not 180 degrees. And it can't be on every issue. You may be able to get somebody to move on guns. You may be able to get somebody to move on women's right to choose. You're not going to get a Republican to change his voter registration by having a conversation with him, not unless they're almost completely there. It's only happened to me one time, and the guy was completely there. But it has to be that personal situation and the trust, and that's the way it should be working as far as I can tell. As far as engaging on Facebook, that's don't sit in the first row. In that, as soon as you put up on Facebook, you noticed something that your son-in-law was saying to his father maybe, or that somebody in Ohio was saying to somebody else. The whole world is watching when you do this on social media. The best way to have these conversations is a one-on-one phone call, or if we ever return to normal, face-to-face. That's the best way to do it, and that's the best way to make a sale. You're less likely to make a sale by putting something on Facebook. I really doubt that very many people are convinced of anything on Facebook. They just use it to reinforce their own personal opinions to begin with.
Yep.
Anyway, if there's got to be a question, do you agree?
Yes, I do.
Well, I don't necessarily agree with that. I believe with the first row, but at the same time, you may find people on Facebook or Twitter who are wavering in some position. And when you are presenting your truth and personalizing it in a way, in some way, it may be that it moves them an inch or two in a direction that you like. And lots of social media will do that. Avoid all the ones who won't. For example, this Facebook page that I mentioned earlier about supporting Biden-Harris, I really question their efficacy. So I don't post there. I'm not sure what's going on with that Facebook page, but with my own, with Indivisible, with other pages, like, for example, Tri-Valley Dems, maybe it's an echo chamber, or there may be someone on the page or on the Twitter account. I don't do Twitter, but Eileen does. That can be moved a little bit in a direction to either become active or start questioning certain things. So I'm not solid on that one-to-one thing, although it's valuable. That's how I feel. So anyway, are there any more questions? Hands raised of any type? Do you see anything, Eileen?
I do not.
Yeah, Ron has a comment to make.
Okay.
Hi. Well, first off, I wanted to say this is a wonderful presentation, and I'm so glad that we have an opportunity to do this important thing, to deal with persuasion and to deal with people from a perspective where we understand, trying to figure out where they're coming from and where we want to move them. This is good stuff. And as Alice said earlier, the psychologist that we hired that came in that gave us a really good training on something very similar to this had the basic messages of, yes, trusting and developing a relationship, such as what Mary was saying. The agreement between the presentation that I made and Ellis has made in terms of dealing with persuasion and minds, and the psychologist is very consistent. Our messages are the same that you're presenting, Mary and Eileen. So, you know, I concur with the basis and the core of what you're saying. As a psychologist, I'm familiar with the literature, the research that's been done over the years on what they call persuasion, that's the research title that they would give on how to change minds and dealing with misinformation and misinformation. There's one basic message that's the root of the communication and sort of the foundation, and that is, one, you have to know who you are trying to persuade, who is your target, what is the demographics of that person. So if it's a young kid, you know, you're not using a grown-up information. If it's an older person, you're not, you know, filling them with facts and information that their brain can't handle. And what's more critical for us is if it's a rigid kind of authority-oriented person, most of the Republicans that we're dealing with, most of the anti-vaxxers, most of the big lie people, these are rigid thinkers. One thing, well, actually there's three things that I would like us to remember, and that's sort of the cream of the research on persuasion, on how to deal with rigid thinkers. One, they don't see things in terms of a scale. Things are more black and white. So there's not a lot of gradations in between it. There's not a lot of thinking about it. You either are strongly on one side or you're strongly on the other side. That's important, okay? The second thing is that these people are respectful and follow authority figures. So these are the kind of people that trust the Bible no matter what. They trust their authority figure on the radio or Fox no matter what. They don't question them because they think there's absolute truth in reality, and therefore the people who have the absolute truth are smarter than us and they can tell us what to do and we need to follow them. So there's a lot of following. Democrats typically want information. They want to make decisions on themselves. Republicans and the rigid don't want that. They sort of want to be told. They don't want to do the hard work of making the choices in the information. They may not trust their skills in terms of science or in terms of understanding statistics, et cetera. So it's not helpful to present information to them typically. So what Mary is saying is, you don't want to go into facts and figures and all that stuff. You want to develop a trust. You want to deal on a personal basis with establishing a relationship, like Ella said. So that's the second thing. What that second thing means in terms of a practical thing is, if you want to switch their opinion and maybe just a little bit, as Ella says, we don't have to go 180 degrees, cite another authority figure that they might trust that has a different opinion. So, maybe their pastor says something different. Maybe another guy on Fox or another guy that they trust, and find out who is it, the guys or the gals that they trust. If they're people who trust authority, find an authority figure that stands and makes your position and has the truth that they're presenting. The third thing is that a lot of those people are working on fear. Okay. They're more fear-driven, and they're more concerned about not belonging to a group. They're concerned about being an individual and being lost. These aren't people who make decisions by themselves as much as say a Democrat or a liberal thinking person does. So they're concerned that if they switch over and become a pro-vaxxer or become a person who doesn't accept the big lie, they might be rejected by their family or their church or their other social groups. So you have to be aware of the fact that a lot of times their thinking brain is shut down by fear, and that the emotional takes over for them. So what you really have to deal with is the emotional stuff on the bottom line, because the brain is shutting down the thinking paths to the front, and it's just going with the fear and flight stuff that's involved in the midbrain, which is the emotional stuff. So that's a long-winded kind of presentation. And I think that this all ties in with what we're saying, and this is all important stuff.
And at some point, as our group develops, we're going to start exploring framing and how frames differ between, as Ron is explaining, between progressives or Democrats and Republicans. And that affects the messaging that we can use or choose to use.
That's really wonderful, because
that we're exposed to.
Yeah, the framing is the right way to look at it, in terms of, if you're going to change someone's mind, you have to know where their mind is in the first place.
But like you said, Ron, one of the most effective ways of changing, say, a conservative's framework is to, one, talk to them about other people they respect.
Yeah.
And, try to get them to understand what the cost is in adhering to some of their beliefs, that it may betray some of the core values that they hold to. And that's one of the most difficult things in, how people armor themselves from getting new information, is that they kind of stand by their loyalties and disregard their core values. But if you can touch on those core values through trust, you can manage to get them to think in alternate ways.
That's a wonderful way of phrasing it. Yeah, I agree.
And framing will help with that. So we're going to move into that at some point.
There was one more question in the comments.
Yes.
From Richard.
Okay.
Richard, do you want to ask the question, or you want me to read it?
I can ask. I mean, it's no big deal. Sorry, I was just trying to unmute. My question was just, first of all, thanks to both of you for being here, but are there like any ways that we can approach persuasion that differs based on whether you're speaking to somebody in person or online or digitally? building that burger could probably be a lot harder when there's a screen between two people or when you're not having that face-to-face interaction. And I was just wondering if you guys had any tips or advice on how to approach that differently.
I totally agree that there are different ways to do it. If you're doing it through any social media, it really helps to be much more concise, but it's hard when you're being very concise and very short to convey the emotion or the commonality. And so much of communication is not just with the words we share, but it's also with, you know, our expressions and our body language and everything else. So you probably will approach it differently, whether you're in person talking on the phone or sharing something via social media. And it you know, like any other skill, it's something that you practice or you just attempt. There's no one right answer to every issue you'll be facing. Well, maybe there is once in a while, but but there's no one right way to do it, you know. And so, I think one of the main points, and Mary had said it, was be genuine. It really, you're going to defeat the entire purpose if someone sees right through you. So, and it's easier to be genuine when you're, you know, when you're either talking on the phone or face to face. I deal with customers who are having problems a lot, and so much gets lost in translation when folks are trying to explain to them in an email. I'm the type, I much rather would pick up the phone and call them immediately, because you can't, you lose something in the words, or not everyone uses the same idioms, or, you know, and Mary would know more about that, especially teaching about developing writing skills and that.
Well, one of the things that I'm aware of as a teacher is that there are different forms of learning, and apprehending things. And I am a visual learner, so I am actually more comfortable putting things into writing. It allows me time to think about my words. I can still be genuine, but I can phrase it in a way that is more true to myself. Whereas when I'm doing an in-person or a phone conversation, I feel more like I'm more on the spot, and I'm more likely to be grasping for words. I'm not an auditory communicator. I'm a visual communicator. And so it depends on where you're coming from as a learner, as a communicator.
So Jonathan, I'm a big fan of, Richard, I'm a big fan of Jonathan Haidt, and he's written a couple of books that I've enjoyed. One's called The Righteous Mind, and one is called The Happiness Hypothesis. And he goes into what it means to explore framing, and what are the differences between a conservative mental approach and a more liberal mental approach, and how the conservatives are basically functioning on 5 different levels, where liberals are kind of functioning on 2, intellect and, you know, motivation of, you know, what they think is the greater good. And conservatives function on a much more broader spectrum that is defined by loyalty and the virtues of self-reliance and things along those lines. But if you want to know what motivates people, I think those 2 books, you know, pretty well frame, you know, what motivates different types of people that you may not be used to.
And back to your question about different styles depending on communication situation, definitely, and you need to find your own.
And I think Karen raised her hand.
Yeah, it's about the book, The Righteous Mind. Do you happen to know the author?
Yeah, Jonathan Haidt. It's
yeah, I'm sorry.
H-A-I-D-T.
H-A-I?
D-T.
D-T. Yeah, you said that first. Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Are we ready to move to something else?
We have
Jackie,
time to break?
Yeah, Jackie, how are we doing? Because we may not have time to do our breakout.
No, we have time.
We do. We do have time.
Because the rest of the meeting is just some general housekeeping and it'll go fast. So
okay.
Okay.
All right. So every week or two there are new false messages. Some are ongoing. Here we have 3 hot button issues that refuse to go away. They are the truth sandwich menu for tonight's breakout groups, critical race theory, also known as CRT, vaccines, yes or no, and the big lie. Did he win or did they cheat? Did we cheat? The big lie. And so let's see what we can cook up. Here's how it will work. We're going into breakout rooms. Jackie will be creating enough breakout rooms to accommodate us, and she will assign us to the rooms. Each room will elect a scribe, or somebody can volunteer to become the scribe. The scribe will be the note taker. So you need to have pencil and paper, something to write with. When Jackie returns us to the, let's see. So the scribe will also be the person who reports back to the main room at the
Are you ready for dinner?
Sessions. When Jackie returns us in 10 minutes, as
turn the light on,
I will be the group reporter.
Yes.
Karen, could you mute yourself, please? I'm sorry, I'm hearing somebody else talk. Eileen and I, as master chefs, not to diminish you, Evan, will be visiting your kitchens. Then after 9 minutes, Jackie will warn us that we will soon be returning to the main menu. She will return us. So far, are there any questions about this process? Hands, if you have questions. Jackie, do you see any questions?
I do not. Let me check for hands raised. Nope.
Nope. Okay.
We're good. So we have a total of 17 people. It'll be 16 in the breakout rooms because I will, as host, will not be assigned. So what I'm going to do is break you out into 3 different groups: CRT, voting, and vaccine. And you're going to have 10 minutes. And at the end of that, like Mary said, it's going to warn you. It's going to bring you back in automatically when it gives you the minute warning, or you can join back into this group yourself. So,
oh, and excuse me, by the way, when you get into the breakout group, it's a good idea to unmute yourself.
All right, welcome back, everyone.
Okay, hello.
So I think, Jackie, is that everyone out of the breakout rooms?
Let's see, they all should be closed now. It does a countdown of the 1 minute and then dumps them.
Perfect.
So yeah, everybody should be back in. Let me, yeah. I can't join any of them, so they're all closed.
Cool. All right. So Eileen and Mary, if you'd like to take us to the final part.
Mary, you have to unmute yourself.
Yep. Okay, so Eileen was the scribe in our group. We did not, and she will also be the reporter. So did I say Eileen? I meant Christy. I'm sorry.
Yes, you did. I'm like, I was.
Christy, would you unmute yourself?
I was hoping Eileen would report.
Yeah, we often get mixed up. So
I honestly didn't contribute to this. It's a little too close to what's currently going on for me on school board. And, you know, a lot of it is just, this just isn't something that's being taught in our schools. And so to tell us to stop doing it, but that's just not enough of an answer. They don't believe that. They think we're somehow secretly teaching things to kids that people don't know about. But we weren't focusing on, you know, K-12. I mean, it is being taught in some graduate schools. So we're talking more generally about whether CRT should be taught at all. And so our truth sandwich started with, we all wanted to be judged as human beings, as individuals, regardless of specific things like your race, like not just on any one dimension. But history shows that we haven't lived up to these ideals, that we have discriminated against people because of their race. And what we want to do is to try to learn from our mistakes and move towards achieving the dreams of our founding fathers. So that was kind of our truth sandwich.
Thank you. You just constructed the bottom bun for us. Thank you, because we hadn't quite gotten to that until this minute with Christy. That was our.
Good. That was good.
So who's next?
Who had voting?
Voting was with Ron, Thad and Phyllis, and Richard, Alan.
So who was the scribe for that group?
Well, we couldn't get past arguing the whole time.
It's true. Independent minds, we didn't even think of electing a leader.
Question, Alan was in your group? Because we had him in our group too, but he wasn't talking.
Oh, that's, Alan was very active and good in our group.
Okay.
So if anybody doesn't step forward, Van, you want to do it?
Well, basically, we had to resolve what was going to be the truth, the top bun. And, you know, we had a little bit of difficulty in trying to frame the question, you know, like, doesn't everybody deserve the right to vote? And, or, you know, do you believe that everyone has the right to vote? And so even that question, based on some of the information that Ron was providing on conversations he's had in the past, that there's even resistance to that basic truth. And it kind of stymied me in being able to figure out, okay, how do I get around that particular roadblock? When people believe they have the right to vote, but feel quite comfortable taking it away from other people. And I don't know, we couldn't get past that, you know, in this discussion. And so I kind of like throw it out there to the floor. What do you think some of the inputs might be to the appropriate way to frame that question?
I would flip it around and say, would you like it? I mean, this could be turned around just as easily next time. How would you like it if your right was taken away? Flip it around.
Yeah, Ron has an answer to that one. He said, I don't mind. I know I have the right to vote. I just don't believe other people are worthy of it. You know, I went, uh-oh. You know, there's a downright bigot on our hands.
I was playing devil's advocate and my horns.
I know, I'm not calling you a bigot. I'm just saying your argument was.
Well, you could start out with our country was founded as a democracy.
Yeah.
There.
Alan kind of brought that up, you know.
The ideal of the democracy was that all of us would be, that all men would be free and able to participate in the democracy. Do you believe we should all be able to participate in this democracy?
Yeah, but that's the problem. If you refer back to the Constitution, the founding fathers didn't want everybody to vote. You know, they were just like the English. You had to own land and lots of it. And then they mollified that a little bit because there were too many small farmers in this country. So they said, if you've got land, you can vote. If you're a woman, you can't vote. If you're
they've been modifying it continuously because the Constitution, the founders had at least the wisdom to know that the Constitution, that time would change things. And so they needed an instrument that would accommodate those changes in the future. So they allowed those changes to occur. And
the point was that we're trying to frame the issue that directly acknowledges that this country has always been founded on the notion, and supported by the Supreme Court, mind you, that voting is a privilege and not a right. You know, if it was a right, we wouldn't be arguing these issues. We would have free and fair elections, but it's not. It's a privilege.
Well, let's just put all of these theoretical arguments or arguments to one side and say that we're Ellis and we're trying to sell a point of view. How would you sell this point of view, Ellis?
You mean Van?
Huh?
He's thinking.
Yeah. He doesn't know he's muted.
Unmute.
There he is. All right, sell it.
How would you sell the point of view, whether it's true or not? How would you sell the idea that in a free and fair that we need to have free and fair elections?
Want Van to answer that, or?
No, Ellis is supposed to sell the pitch, but I mean, it's complicated. I always thought it was straightforward, that the pitch
I think this is one of the issues, that you move people forward by showing some inconsistencies in their thinking. If they're bottom line people that are black and white, then it's a little bit harder. But if they're people who are a little bit more open because you've developed trust and that kind of stuff, then you show them the inconsistencies like Van has shown. So I think my devil, who was, you know, kind of Hitlerish, basically he got me at a point where I had to sort of like pause, and that would be where I would think and maybe change my opinion a little bit next time. Because like a lot of business negotiations, I'm not going to change my opinion this time because then I lose.
Okay. Anybody else have a way to sell the idea of free and fair elections in the United States being an ideal that we are striving for?
Maybe the fact that it hasn't always been a given. Women could not vote. People could not vote like back in the original Constitution, like you said, unless you were a landowner and you had slaves too. That counted more towards your vote. And we just, in my opinion, we need to scare people and tell them it could be gone again. And you could lose your right to vote. You could be the one standing in line for 5 hours in the heat with no water. It's a fragile thing. And I think that we almost lost it, and we could still lose it.
I love that. I love what you just said. You said voting is a fragile thing, and we've come close to losing it. I think a lot of people might agree with this. Or voting is a fragile thing. We need to support the vote. How about that?
I have a different hamburger that I would make. And the top bun would be, the truth is that we started out as a country not wanting a king. That was our primary motivation, that we wanted to govern ourselves, except ourselves were an exclusive group, as Van has pointed out. And over 2 centuries more, we've moved the arc of just the moral arc of the universe toward justice. I said it wrong. The arc of the moral universe toward justice. And we continue to do that. And the argument is that we say in the Constitution and our documents, in order to form a more perfect union. We're not saying that this is a perfect country, but we're moving toward making it more perfect. And the argument should be that in order to make it more perfect, we should make it so that more people could have a political impact and vote. And that's what democracy is about. And we're not going to reach that in our lifetimes, but we can make it better than it was when we got here. And that's the basic idea of American democracy, in that we keep on improving it. We improve it by ending slavery, by women's suffrage, by the Civil Rights Act, and now hopefully by the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. That would move us toward justice. And that's my hamburger.
Well, remember the picture of the hamburger with all the bacon dangling from it, Ellis?
Yeah.
You got a wonderful, I
got a Dagwood sandwich.
Yeah, and if we could simplify it, I think we'd have a good thing going on.
Yeah, well, it needs simplifying. I agree.
Yeah.
It's not
a good thing. Pardon?
Nothing.
Well, this was good.
Well, I think one of the things that's important to recognize is that these particular questions, like voting and CTC and the big lie, these are all basic abstractions of a much deeper fear, that have gotten people locked into these, bifurcated camps, and it's like never the twain shall meet. And that's a problem that I've been, really worried about lately, is the country is so polarized and is being fed disinformation to maintain that polarization. And even voting is an abstraction. Mm-hmm. And I'm worried about how do we start to, bring people back together, some of us, towards trying to create a larger, I don't know if you might want to call it center, but, get some people to start letting go of their fears and start thinking about ways that we can do better in this country.
Well, I'm hoping that the process that we're embarking on this evening is a good start. We have another group who hasn't reported yet. And
I just wanted to say that I really like what Richard put in the chat about, that part of the big lies about all that undocumented and everybody else who is supposedly voting. So this is why these, many of these state acts are being enacted to prevent the so-called undocumented and all of this fraud that went on that is totally untrue, that it can even be proved that it wasn't true. And I think that some of, also pointing to unintended consequences of going so much in the opposite direction. I think of my mom. My dad passed away last year, and my mom had let her driver's license lapse. And so she needed when my dad passed away, she just needed all kinds of stuff, for it to settle the estate and all this other stuff. And so trying to get her a identification card. And she always went by first initial, middle name, last name on everything. Well, her birth certificate has her full and her marriage certificate. And so trying to get her an ID. So, so now you understand people who need voter IDs and that she had her electric bills and all this other, but to get her an ID, and she didn't drive, and she had to go in person, and bring all these documents that she didn't have anymore because she's 88 years old, you know. So I think that that's another where you kind of make it a little more personal, because some of these suppression things that are being put into place can end up biting you in the butt, you know, at some time. Like someone had said at the beginning, how would you feel if these rights were taken away from you? So anyway.
So again, a personal story can make the difference. Facts and figures might not do it, probably not, but a personal story or coming from the heart is more likely to do it. So again, who was part of the third group and who is the scribe for that group?
Well, it was vaccines, but go ahead. It was, we ended up with no scribe either.
Okay.
Well, my big takeaway from it is of those who did not get vaccinated as yet, they have a variety of reasons. And some of them make sense. I brought one up where our 12-year-old granddaughter was suddenly eligible to be vaccinated a month or so ago. And we wondered what long-term effect that might have. We haven't got any idea what it's going to do to reproductive systems and things like that, how it's going to affect 12-year-olds.
But she got vaccinated.
But she got vaccinated, but there was a reluctance at that point. And I realized that people all over the country who haven't been vaccinated, and it's about 100 million Americans, about a third of the eligible people haven't been vaccinated. Some of them have what they consider very valid reasons. They've got other medical conditions, and some of them just believe some of this fake news that you know, that we were talking about earlier in this meeting. But they each have their own reason. There was a gal who's a basketball coach who goes around convincing people to be vaccinated. And they ask her what she does. She says, I keep on talking to them until I figure out why they haven't been vaccinated and then pursue that particular reason rather than taking them on in all the possible reasons that somebody doesn't get vaccinated.
Did your group come close to creating a truth sandwich of any kind?
Well, Evan had the statement that everyone could agree with.
Good.
Yeah. So the statement I figured everyone could agree with is that last year sucked. And and as we have been getting more people vaccinated, we've been able to reopen more businesses and return to more normal life. And so that was kind of I figured those are facts that, you know, whether you agree that the vaccines caused it or not, or, you know, whatever your beliefs are on that, but those things we know are true. And I think really it's important when we're focusing on these truth sandwiches and before we get too deep into the weeds or when we're thinking about arguments, is one thing that we have to remember is that walking away part. There's 10% of the population on any issue that you can't convince of anything. You know, you couldn't convince, there's 10% of the people out there you cannot convince that the world is round. And nothing you say is going to change the fact for that 10%, you know, that the world is round. You could fly them around the world and they still won't believe you.
Kyrie Irving.
Any chance we can put them in space with Bezos?
Yeah, those trips
space.
So Evan, the comment that you created that everyone could agree with would be a great beginning to your truth sandwich.
Yep.
And rephrased, it could also become the summary or the bottom, the lower bun of your truth sandwich. And you would need to go into the middle to find, to express many people, but now many people have doubts and fears about getting vaccinated. And then we could incorporate Ellis's idea that, and many of these fears are legitimate, and need to be explored. And you could use a personal story about the exploration, what you had to do to find out whether or not to get vaccinated. I had my own fears back in, I think it was February. I wasn't sure if I was going to get vaccinated. So I started reading a lot. And eventually I found out how the vaccine was developed and I felt more comfortable with it. So I did, I got vaccinated and it feels much freer now.
I like what a rapper said. He said, you know, we've been vaccinated all our lives, and I don't know why you're not wanting to get this vaccination. I mean, have you ever met a guy with mumps?
Or polio?
Or polio.
Or polio. Yeah. I've known people with polio. They're older.
Yeah, when we're young, we get all these different kinds of vaccinations and it's helpful. So that's one of the things that I've found is helpful is saying, have you ever been vaccinated before? And they go, well, I don't know, let's see. And then you can list some of the things for them.
And that's another very good start to a truth sandwich. When we were young, what did you say? When we were young, most of us have been vaccinated.
Yeah.
For
many things.
School.
Right.
And to get to school. Yeah. And did your parents question it? No. So one of the ways to get to these people is to cite authority figures that they trust. And you can say, oh, okay, well, you don't know if it's going to aggravate an existing medical condition. Well, ask your doctor.
Yeah.
Go ask your doctor if he would recommend that you get vaccinated. And 99% of the doctors are going to say yes.
All right. So, yeah, this has been a wonderful conversation. And I really wanted to thank Eileen and Mary for doing this workshop for us. I think it was very informative. I think it was very, very active discussions. And I really appreciate everyone's involvement. I hope everyone got something to take away. Do you have any final words or thoughts, Mary or Eileen?
I just wanted to thank everybody. This was a great discussion. I especially want to thank Jackie because she spent a fair amount of time with us last night, helping us out with some of the technical stuff. Thank you so much, Jackie.
Yep, thanks all.
And she's been available all day if we had questions. So that was terrific.
Thank you so much again for this. This was exciting and informative, and I really appreciate the information you had for us. I think everyone has at least something they can take away from this. So we very much appreciate it. So with that, we do have some business that we need to take care of before we wrap the meeting up. So first, I'm going to turn it over to our treasurer, Alan, for the treasurer's report.
Yes, he left.
Alan, you're muted.
Now, am I okay?
Good.
You can hear me now. Okay, yes. I was saying that the last 2 months, we haven't had much inactivity. We did have membership dues of $135. From that, they take off $5.74 for fees from Square, which gives us a total overall income increase of $129.26. We had no other expenses in the last 2 months. So it leaves us a total of $2,605.16. Also, as far as membership, we have 117 members now, and we have 33 people who were on the list last year who have not responded. Any questions?
All right. Thank you very much. And then next up is the approval of the minutes. I'll post the link in chat if anyone needs that up.
And these are the minutes from May. We did not have a meeting last month, so put on your memory caps. And if you see anything there that needs to be corrected, let me know. We'll give you a few minutes to read through it. Also, the Central Committee took last month off, so there's no report for that. So we're going to go through this pretty quick.
And then while we're reading the minutes, actually, just for the sake of time, I'm going to open up open discussion for this, and then we'll take at the end of the meeting a motion to approve the minutes. So if anyone has any announcements that they'd like to make, I have one short announcement, which is there's going to be a redistricting workshop coming up on August 11th from 6 to 8 p.m. There's a Zoom registration link that I'm putting in chat right now. If anyone would like to sign up, or any of you in the home audience watching this later, you can email me and I will get you the information on that. So it's a redistricting workshop to learn more about the redistricting process coming to Alameda County in the coming months on August 11th, 6 to 8 p.m.
Do you know what date the redistricting will be finalized? When the lines will be drawn?
We don't know yet.
Alameda County.
The due date is February, right?
Somewhere around there. I would have to double check. Mary, you have an announcement?
Yeah, I'm just checking my calendar here. The next Tri-Valley, Livermore Indivisible meeting for August is August 8th. And we've been dealing with disinformation tonight. There will be a special speaker, and I didn't really keep track of his name. Maybe some Indivisible members recall it. But he's a special speaker who is an expert on disinformation, who will be speaking at the Livermore Indivisible meeting. And to sign up, you could go to our website, I believe, under events, and there will be a link. And following his presentation, we might reappear with some other truth sandwich material. So we'll have disinformation and then telling the truth.
Awesome, thank you. Any other announcements? Or
I have one announcement. I am hosting a get together for volunteers for Pamela Price for DA at my home next week. So I'll post the information here. If anybody is interested in volunteering for the campaign or just stopping by to say hi in person, feel free to come by. And here's the information about that kickoff.
All right, wonderful. Thank you for that. And thank you for hosting. Any other announcements, or shall we take a motion on the minutes?
I move.
Second.
Motion by Van, a second by
Mary.
Mary. All right, so we have a motion by Van, a second by Mary for the main minutes. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Any abstentions?
Aye.
Okay, one abstention. An abstention from Ms. Sepula. And so the motion passes with one abstention. And Christy posted in chat some information on the timeline to answer Van's earlier question. So it looks like through October is going to be the public meetings, and in October, November is when the draft maps will come out. November 30th, the maps will be presented to the Board of Supervisors, and then the December 15th meeting will be the final adoption. So there's some timeline.
So that's not the state mapping.
Yeah, that's county.
Is that the county map, Christy? That's the county. So that's the county's time frame. I imagine the state mapping is going to be on a similar time frame, just because they're, with where primaries are, you're going to need to know the maps basically at the beginning of the year. So I don't know the exact timing, but I'll try to find that information out for the next meeting. So with that, Any last announcements? Otherwise, it is 9 o'clock.
I have a piece of business to ask you about, Evan. In the announcement for this meeting, you said that you're interested in changing the bylaws, and anybody interested in working on that with you should get in touch with you. What kind of changes, real briefly, are you looking at?
So I'm not looking at anything specific. It is literally to take the bylaws, which have been just amended for the past, I think, at least 10 plus years, and just doing a rewrite through them. So I'm looking to form a committee to go through them, see what needs to be done and how they can be, best updated, and if there's anything that needs to be added or not. It may well end up that the committee decides that they are perfect as they are, or it may well be that we look at them and say, these are things that are missing that we really want to see in there. And so it's really taking a pass at them. So if anyone is interested, please email me if you're interested in joining that group. And we'll be looking through the bylaws. I think I see Ron's hand.
Interested in the committee, yeah.
All right. And anyone else, if you decide you're interested, I don't have.
I'm interested also.
Okay.
I thought I saw Jackie's hand.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that, the central committees, anything that gets changed, it works through what they have laid out for us as far as what our requirements are.
Perfect.
In addition that we make.
Are you the liaison to the central committee?
Well, kind of. I mean, I am for Alameda County.
Alameda County.
Costa.
Yeah.
So.
You probably need to be on this group then.
Has the county asked you to ask the clubs in general, all the clubs in general, to make any kind of specific changes?
Well, I think we made changes recently, right, to conform to what Contra Costa County would require if we ever get a charter there.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the central committees asked to see our bylaws. So, I'm going to want to read through their bylaws just to make sure there's nothing that we change that ends up biting our, hurt our chance in getting support there.
Perfect. Sounds great. If anyone else does decide that they want to join, like I said, there's no date certain at this point on when we're going to be doing it. It is a background project, but it'll get done. It's not a pressing project currently. So just let me know, shoot me an email. I'll be happy to have you join in, and we can we'll be looking through that. So with that, it is 9:03. I am going to call this meeting adjourned. Everyone have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Good meeting, Evan.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Good meeting.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Mary.
Thanks to
You're welcome.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
And I'm ending the recording.